Welcome to Season 2, Episode 7 of the MJ Sports Podcast. My name is Mark, and I'm joined by Jonas, and this is your week of sports and review.
Sports. And with that ghostly intro, we're back once again. Another week in the sports universe.
You know, I gotta say, I'm a big fan of you switching things up a little bit every week with the sports chant.
That's right. You got to keep it fresh.
Yeah, we're all about that around here. So
that's right. Because this is one of the episodes I've been looking forward to more than some of the other ones that we've done. Because, our main segment this week is going to be fantasy baseball. But before we really jump into that, we're just going to cover the good old Sweet 16, the Elite Eight. They just finished up with the Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday games. And, there's a couple main takeaways in my opinion. Gonzaga, if they lose either of the next two games, I will be absolutely shocked. And UCLA, I don't get it. I don't understand how they've made it this far, but they beat Michigan, which I know you picked Michigan. So how are you feeling?
You know, it's tough, but I mean UCLA is a whole lot better than I expected. Like I don't know how they've done it, but I mean Michigan had they had their chances in the game, but yeah, I kind of agree with you. Like I don't like if Gonzaga loses, like if Gonzaga doesn't win this, I'm just gonna be shocked because they look real good.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you got Baylor versus Houston, which I kind of figured that Houston section was going to be kind of a crap show, but I mean they look pretty good. I still feel like Syracuse, if Syracuse could have played better and shot the ball a little bit better, I feel like they could have won that game. Houston scraped by Rutgers, which in March Madness, I mean, I guess all you need is a little bit of luck and scraping by a couple of games, but I don't see them beating Baylor. I mean, I don't know about you, but it seems like the gap between Gonzaga undefeated and Baylor only losing 2 games all year still seems like such a big gap.
I definitely agree, and that's no discredit to Baylor. Like, I mean, Baylor's a very good team. I mean, they've pretty much. It seems like they've got 6 people who can make a shot from just about anywhere. But Gonzaga is just utterly dominant this year.
Who do you think wins between Baylor and Houston?
I'd say it's a tough one. I think Baylor though. When Baylor's clicking, I just feel like they've got to have a lot go wrong for their offense to completely derail because they've got so many people who can shoot the ball. So, and I just don't think I see that happening. So I think they're gonna be able to stay in it, and I think they'll win.
Yeah, I hope they do anyway because I think it'll give Gonzaga the better matchup for the championship. But
yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I don't have. I mean, I don't have too much more with that besides. So my family has done a little March Madness bracket for since like 2017, but this is like the 4th year I think, and I've won twice. And this year, my mom, well, if Michigan would have won, she would have gotten the Final Four exactly correct. And I mean, she doesn't really watch college basketball that much or anything, but she's just blowing everyone out of the water. So,
Oh, congratulations to Jonas's mom.
oh, and she also has won once before, so it's only been me and my
Ooh.
mom to have won.
You gotta find a way to stay out ahead next year.
That's right. I think I could have won last year, but I guess that's what we say every year.
I mean, I think Wisconsin could have won last year, but they didn't because it didn't happen. So,
I know. Unfortunate.
but
Well, I'm ready to get into the main segment of this.
yeah, so we're big into baseball, and we just wrapped up our fantasy baseball draft for one of our main leagues um, about 2 weeks ago, and I think our plan here is to just kind of walk you through, probably go through our own rosters, and then maybe share our opinions on, maybe a little bit of the fantasy outlook for this year. Does that sound right, Jonas?
Yeah, that sounds fine for me.
Well, would you like to go out on ahead and talk about your team a little bit?
Uh, yeah, I guess just before we do that, maybe clue in the listeners on our scoring system a little bit here.
Ooh, good call. Good call.
But basically, we have singles are worth 1 point, doubles 2, triples and home runs are 4. Just because triples are a little bit more challenging to get, so we went ahead and bumped it from 3 to 4. Total bases is worth 1 piece, so you basically just double the amount of points you would get from single, double, triple, home run. Walks are 2, runs scored is 1, RBI is 1, stolen base 3, strikeouts -1. The game-winning RBI is 3 points. Intentional walks, you get a point. Hit by pitch, a point. Sacrifice bunt or sac fly is a point. Caught stealing, -1. Hitting for the cycle, 20. Grand slams, 8. And then on the pitching side, each inning pitched is worth 3. So you basically get 1 point per out. Earned runs, -2. Wins, 5. Losses, -5. Saves, 5. Blown saves, -5. Holds, 5. Strikeouts, 2. Walks issued, -1. Shutouts, 12. Box, -3. Pickoffs, 2. Complete games, 7. No hitters, 20. Perfect games, 25. And we have 6 starting pitching slots, 2 relievers, 1 catcher, 1 first base, 1 second base, 1 third base, 1 shortstop, an extra infielder, 4 outfielders, a DH, 2 utilities with 4 bench positions. So, and that is, we have figured out that scoring system over the course of a couple years of adjustments and trying to optimize the best way to keep it balanced between pitching and batting. I think the first year we did it, pitching was absolutely dominant. It was like whoever had the best pitchers pretty much dominated the league. So yeah, now that formality's out of the way, hopefully it didn't bore you too much here, but yeah, I'll go ahead and get into my roster a little bit. I don't necessarily feel the greatest about it, but I think definitely better than my team last year, considering I did not make the playoffs last year. So, catcher, unfortunately, I couldn't get my man Gary Sanchez, which I've had every single year that we've played, which has been 4 years now. This will be our 5th. Then I get probably the best first baseman, Freddie Freeman. We got Whit Merrifield at my second base position. Matt Chapman from the Oakland A's, who hopefully he just hits home runs because that's all he's good for. Xander Bogaerts, Max Muncy, which, yeah, that was kind of a panic pick there. Charlie Charlie Blackmon, Austin Meadows, Joey Gallo, Alex Verdugo, Yordan Alvarez, Nick Solak, Didi Gregoris, Andrew McCutcheon, Josh Donaldson, and my man, who I hope turns it around this season, Travis Shaw, closing in my bench. Then for pitching, we got Trevor Bauer, Jack Flaherty, Clayton Kershaw, Zach Wheeler, Dylan Bundy, Joe Musgrove, and I'm just going to say probably the best bullpen here, Josh Hader and Devin Williams, followed by...
Which both happen to come from the best bullpen in the major leagues. So
true. The Milwaukee Brewers, obviously. And I got Kevin Gausman as a bench pitcher, and I drafted Noah Syndergaard and put him on the IL immediately. Maybe he comes back and, I don't know, pitches a perfect game for me in the championship or something stupid. but yeah, that's my roster.
Well, I guess I'll walk you through mine. I feel a little bit better about my roster in this league than I do in my other league, but so at catcher I've got Salvador Perez. At first base I have Matt Olson, who mans the opposite corner of Matt Chapman from the A's. Also pretty much only good for home runs. And then I have Ozzy Albies at second, Jose Ramirez at third, Francisco Lindor at shortstop. I'm banking on a comeback year from Ketel Marte. He showed a little bit more of that pop in spring training that he had back in 2019. So, I'm confident there. I have Mike Yastrzemski as one of my outfielders. I also have Starling Marte. Not exactly thrilled about that pick, but there really wasn't anyone else. I needed an outfielder, and there wasn't really much else left on the board. I also have Michael Conforto, who I'm hoping gets a little bit of a boost from a better Mets squad. And then I have Lorenzo Cain. He's currently slotted in my lineup. He'll probably be more of a bench bat that I keep around. At DH, I have Jock Peterson, who has been slamming the ball in the spring training. Hopefully, he can carry that into the regular season. And then I have Carlos Correa as a utility player. I have Anthony Rizzo, who I got pretty late in the draft, just hoping he can stay healthy. And then on my bench, I have Jesse Winker as one of my bench players. I also have Austin Hayes. And then I drafted George Springer, but he's currently on the IL. And that's who Austin Hayes replaced on my team. Getting into my rotation, I have Jacob deGrom, Walker Buehler, Jose Barrios, Corbin Burns. If you don't know who Corbin Burns is, I think he's going to be a sneaky Cy Young candidate this year. I also have Shohei Ohtani, who in our league can be used as both a pitcher and a bench bat. We'll kind of see how that goes. And then I have Marcus Stroman. I have James Karinchak as a reliever, and I have Drew Pomeranz as a reliever. Pomeranz was a last-minute addition because I drafted Nick Anderson, but he got put on the IL. And then I also have Tyler Mahle on my bench, and I have Framber Valdez on my bench.
Yeah, no, I like the Drew Pomeranz pickup.
Yeah, he's an interesting player because his career kind of looked like it was coming to an end because he had been a starter for a long time, and then Milwaukee traded for him, and Milwaukee moved him to the bullpen, and he pitched great in the second half. And then ever since he's been moved to the bullpen, he's kind of resurrected his career. He seems much more effective as a reliever. So
Yeah, yeah. He was one of those guys that had the starting position player capability the last couple years. And I know last year I put him in as one of my starting pitchers as a reliever and got me some bonus points.
yeah, there's a lot of strategy when it comes to players with multiple positions.
There is. Just looking at your team, I don't know. Salvador Perez could easily be the best catcher, but yeah, which I guess this is kind of the thing with fantasy baseball a little bit and just fantasy sports in general, kind of taking guesses on who you think's going to bounce back and maybe have a good year. But Ketel Marte, that really the two Martes on your team. You ended up with them, but I think everyone else was.
Well, I didn't exactly draft either one of them and anything close to a high pick. Like I got them both fairly late, so it wasn't really like I wasn't reaching. I drafted them both well below their projected pick value. Doesn't mean I necessarily. I liked the Ketel Marte pick a little bit more just because I think there's more upside there potentially. You kind of know what you're going to get in Starling Marte, and he's just getting a little bit older, which means he loses a little bit of his speed. But yeah, no, I mean, I get what you're saying there. I mean, I remember, I think the second year we did this, I think my final roster, I think I only had 6 players left on my team that I originally drafted.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like the rosters, just because there's so much that goes into play during a baseball season, like, you see all the slumps that happened last year. You usually see a couple big guys have those during a normal season too. We just saw it a whole lot more widely spread last year because of the strange circumstances. But yeah, you really kind of have to be, you know, making changes to your roster as the season progresses.
Well, and I'll go ahead and just say this. We've had 4 seasons, and we had a guest on earlier named Brock, and he's in this league. He appeared in the episode, I believe, B Rock and Roll. Not sure what episode number that is, but he has won 3 of our fantasy championships, and I have won 1. And the year I won, my 2 top picks were Chris Sale and Corey Kluber, and they were both hurt within the first month of the season. And I think I only ended up like 2 pitchers and 4 batters. Yeah, so about 6 people on my team. Kind of like what you said. And there's so many guys that come up late in the season. I mean, that just.
Well, yeah, like I a couple of years ago, I picked Acuna up really early in the season before he got called up. Because I had heard about him, and that's something that sometimes worth doing. If you've heard about a prospect for a while, there's a lot of hype. Sometimes it's warranted to stash him on your bench for a little while and see if they result in anything. And I mean, he ended up being a good pickup for me that year. I did the same thing with Fernando Tatis before he came up. So yeah, like Jonas said, you kind of have these guys that are top prospects that come up throughout the year, but you also just kind of have some guys sort of come out of nowhere.
Even guys that don't sustain, like I picked up that Aristides Aquino.
Aquino.
Yeah. He was good for like 1 month, he hit his like 20 home runs in a month or whatever it was. And then kind of just fell off. I think obviously you see that you're not going to get rid of him, but hopefully he can make kind of a bounce back year this year for the Reds.
It's definitely anybody can have an off year or anyone can have a breakout year. It's just You can look at projections all you want, but the projections are probably going to be wildly wrong for a lot of players. So
Yeah, yeah, and Mark, I don't know how in depth we want to get into the other people's rosters, but for those of you that don't know with fantasy baseball, really pitching, I kind of said earlier that pitching our first season this really dominated. And in a certain way, it still kind of does. I mean, definitely your top three, Garrett Cole, Shane Bieber, and DeGrom are going to be, they're going to score the most points, like just a little bit more over the course of the season than your top 5 or 6 batters. I mean, it puts you at a definite advantage. And
yeah,
through the years, it changes who your top 3 pitchers for that season are. I mean, obviously, going back before coronavirus, it was Scherzer, injured, were kind of your top go-to guys, and one guy in our league, but we'll go by his fancy name of Forever Air Gordon, who decided he was just going to, pretty much pick batters through the first half. Is pretty much, I mean, his number one pitcher is Lance Lynn. Carlos Carrasco and Matt Boyd with Andrew Heine on the bench. So I think by far he has the worst pitching staff. And I think by the end of the season, I mean, if Lance Lynn gets hurt or just underperforms, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to make it very far.
yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned it because you cut out a little bit there for a little while for me at least, but in our league, um, we basically have it set up to where you get 12 starts a week. So like on my roster, for example, you're gonna keep, you probably want at least 4 guys that you're gonna hold on to. All kind of be like the core of your rotation. So in my case, that's going to be Degrom, Bueller, Barrios, and Burns. Um, but on my team, I also have Tyler Malley. I also have Marcus Stroman. Throughout the year, guys like that, I'm going to end up dropping them uh, to pick up streamlined starts from free agency in order to get those 12 starts. So there's kind of a little bit more of a challenge there, and usually there's always a couple breakout pitchers, think like Zach Gallen, for example. He kind of broke out a little bit. Guys kind of like that, they'll usually end up in people's rotations. So, like Air Gordon, he's going to probably have to rely on finding a couple of those guys. Dylan Bundy last year, for example, granted, it was a small sample size, but I mean, Dylan Bundy.
I'm hoping he keeps it going because I drafted him hoping that he could maybe find that magic again.
But that's just another whole nother part of the strategy, because you might not see as much of a shuffling in your batters on a week to week basis. Throughout the year, you're going to obviously pick up guys and drop guys. Like, I mean, there's honestly a good chance Lorenzo Cain's not going to be on my roster, a couple weeks into the season. He just doesn't have quite the bat he used to have. I'll pick him up for somebody who maybe had a really strong first week. But, usually you'll hold on to them for a little while. Pitchers, you're kind of bringing in different guys every week. You're hoping they don't give you, or I think 2 years ago, I lost a game because I can't remember who it was, but the Nationals pitched somebody and he gave up like 11 runs in the first inning, like didn't even get out of the inning. and he got me like negative 25 points because of it, and I ended up losing that week because of him. Now, granted, that doesn't happen very often, but you got to hope that you're kind of hoping with the streamliner, you want a good solid, you're really hoping for 30 points out of them, but I mean,
You're hoping for
honestly,
at least 20.
most cases you're hoping for 20, but
Yeah. Yeah, if you streamline somebody that gets 30 points, you almost hold on to him for the next start.
yeah.
Just hoping he can do it again. But yeah, I'm not sure what else what else you want to talk about regarding this. I mean, oh, here we go.
It's a little. I mean, I don't really want to go through and list every single team's roster. That's quite a few players. Um, maybe are there any players you can think of from the draft that you thought their projected draft value, aside from Starling Marte, um, was way too high compared to how you think they'll perform?
Man, I trying to think of somebody. Oh, for sure, for sure. There's this one guy, Alberto Mondesi.
Oh
Oh my
yes,
goodness, he was projected like what, about fifth, sixth round. Um, and man, I drafted him last year, albeit it was like my third to last pick, thinking, oh, this guy, he's projected to do okay. He's young. Maybe he can play well, and just absolutely played like garbage. And then somehow was, top 6 round player projected. And I just don't get it. He's actually going to start the year on the 10-day IL.
yeah. He's essentially probably more like a 230 hitter that prioritizes defense and will get steals, but steals are only valuable if you get on base. So, yeah, I definitely agree. He's somebody that stands out for me as well.
Who else? I mean, I feel like we
I
talked
mean,
about this. There's a few White Sox players.
oh, Luis Robert. He was projected. I want to say it was around. I might be thinking too high, but I thought it was 36.
Yeah, I thought it was somewhere around there.
I mean, that is in my mind way too high for him. I know he's got a lot of name recognition already because the White Sox have, started this trend of paying guys before they even get to the majors. Um, he's a prospect, but even if you look at like the projections through the year, it's not like the projections are even that spectacular. Like the ESPN was like projecting him for like a 235 average with like I think it was like 25 home runs. And I'm like, how does that warrant that spot? And he's still very unproven. I mean, I think like if you want to talk out like Eloy Jimenez at least has shown some, he's shown he has some uh spark in his bat. Now granted he's gonna miss most of the season, but I do not see that in Luis Robert, at least not at this point, to warrant that high of a selection.
No, and I feel kind of the same with like Eloy Jimenez and, well, mostly him, I guess, from the White Sox. I just do not get. Sometimes I just don't get the ESPN rankings.
Yeah, he is also too high, but at least he's shown a little bit more with his bat than Robert. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, it still doesn't warrant his pick at all. But And I think like Kyle Tucker is another guy kind of like that.
Yeah,
He came up for the Astros. I do think he's going to be pretty good here in a few years. Um, but wasn't he in the 20s?
he was 28, if I remember,
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah, he was, and I ended up panic taking him in another league um, a little bit later than that, but it was, in my mind, it was still a little too high. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like, they've got projections for him, but when you look in baseball, it's hard because they've got all these underlying stats. And sometimes these underlying stats just do not reflect on what you see on the field. And, sometimes you can say it was bad luck. Sometimes you can say it was a bad matchup, whatever. But in my mind, until I see some results that warrant that, I'm not going to take a chance on any projections because projections in baseball are incredibly hard to predict. So,
Yeah. So on the opposite side of that, then, who are some guys maybe projected, pretty low and could have been maybe projected higher and maybe some steals, some draft steals here.
um, well, I think Correa is potentially one. Um, I
Mm,
don't remember where
I
he was.
see. I don't. I'll let you explain that, but I don't feel that one as much. But he was pretty low.
Well, right. Well, and I mean, he slid in our draft. I guess I didn't exactly go because you're talking about projections, not where we actually got him. Because I drafted him with the 102nd pick.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
theoretically, it's still not bad, but
yeah,
I don't know. To me, he's shown kind of a decline to just kind of a 250 average. Not
yeah.
really as much power anymore.
He's still 26 though,
Yeah, I
which
guess I forget that.
which is hard to believe. Like, I mean, and he has dealt with a lot of injuries over the last 2 years. Um, so I do think he's still got a lot of upside potentially. And I mean, yeah, he has been a little bit of a disappointment the last 2 years, but he's still 26. So I mean, I'd say it's hard to believe that ship's completely sailed. Okay, one I do have, um, and I actually think Marcus Stroman potentially, um, because Stroman was projected way back in our draft. Like I had to search. I kind of forgot about him, and then as I was kind of digging deep into the projections during our draft, I found him. And part of that reason I think is because he opted out of this last year. Um, but I think he's somebody that if you potentially, because he's going to be the number two starter for the Mets this year, and I mean he looks like he's in shape for spring training. If you look at his velocity and everything, it all seems like it's there. Um, so I mean, it kind of looks like he's, you know, I think maybe some of that concern was, oh, guy took a year off, you know, was away from the team. Did he stay in shape? You know, did he keep his velocity? All of that. Um, if he still has all that, and it looks like he does, I think he's potentially a sneaky player that if you've got a weaker rotation, could find his way uh, in there.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. That was a guy I was looking at taking, and I actually took him in a different league. But yeah, I mean he really wasn't that bad before, so I don't know how he fell so far. Besides, like you said, just by him opting out. So
Yeah.
uh, I mean, a guy I kind of want to look at a little bit is I don't know. This may sound. I have two guys I think, and one of them you might be thinking, what are you thinking here? But The first guy is Austin Meadows, and I think I took him in the 90s. And yeah, he's a guy who underperformed last year, but it could be blamed to injury. 2 years ago, he was really good. So I think he could have been a little bit higher projected. But and the other guy, Mark, you might not believe me here, but I believe Joey Gallo. This is his year.
Oh, God.
This is Joey's year to put up phenomenal numbers. And by phenomenal, I mean just like a ton of home runs and hitting like 250. I think he can do it. He played extremely well in the spring training. He hit 333 in spring training, 426 on base percentage, 15 RBIs, and I think like six or seven home runs. So I don't know, Mark.
I mean, by that same logic, I'm gonna go with Travis Shaw because I'm pretty sure in most leagues
Yes.
Travis Shaw went undrafted.
Yes, I think I drafted him dead last
and
to the 200th pick.
and hey, he's gonna get a lot of opportunities this year. And you have to remember, he is the mayor of Ding Dong City.
That's
And
right.
just a couple years ago, he was slamming dingers with the Brewers, and he's going to get a lot of chances this year. At both third and first base. So, I mean, by that logic, you know, I mean, Travis Shaw, he's undraftable. Take him with your last pick. See what happens, or maybe just keep an eye on him because he probably won't get drafted in most leagues. Keep an eye on him. Just kind of see how the first couple of the week season go. Could have a little bit of, could have a potential, 260 hitter with, well, probably more realistically 240 to 250 hitter with 30 home runs on your hands. So,
But well, I was basically just saying, we get at least a full season this year once again. Thank goodness.
yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for fantasy. If you don't have anything else, there's a couple bits of baseball news we can cover.
Yeah.
So, for all of you out there, everyone's got two favorite umpires in the MLB. One of them's named Joe West, who sometimes seems like he just wants to fight players. And then the wonderful Angel Hernandez. And some news I saw. So Angel Hernandez, he's famously known. I think last season or maybe it was the year before, he had a game where he had 3 calls when he was basically umpiring first. That replay overturned him in the same game, and like none of them were close. Like all of them were obvious misses. And he is just an all-around awful umpire. But in the MLB, pretty much once you make the big leagues, um, the league's not going to fire you no matter how terrible your performance is. You kind of just have to wait for them to retire. But he sued the league a couple years ago now, and basically he was claiming discrimination as the basis for why he was not being selected to be crew chief for an umpiring crew. And he kind of cherry picked some examples that he kind of brought up tenure because he has been around for a while. But I think when everybody saw this, everybody realized like there's nothing, no basis to it really. Like the real reason is you're just an awful umpire. Um, and I mean, everybody says that. Like nobody contests that. So, but that suit actually basically just basically came to an end. Judge found that there's absolutely no evidence that the MLB discriminated against Hernandez. Um, And so maybe, you know, I don't know. But basically, we got the result we all thought was going to happen. Um, and we'll see if maybe Angel Hernandez decides to file another one. But and then the other big piece of news is Francisco Lindor. So he went to the Mets, and when the Mets traded for him, they obviously thought, we want to lock him up long term. It's New York. We want to bring stars here. So the Mets have made an offer to Lindor for 325 million. They've said that's their max. Now, from what I heard, and I don't have any sources that confirm this is true. This is just from what I've kind of heard. I heard something that was saying Lindor was kind of like trying to hint to the Mets, hey, I'm not going to demand anything crazy. It's going to be below like 350 million. Mets are probably like, oh, we can probably work with that. Turns out Lindor wants, and I believe it's 385 million. And it doesn't sound like he's willing to budge. And the Mets have basically, from what it sounds like, are not planning on budging from where they're at. In my mind, I don't see any team that's going to give Lindor 385 million. And I think it'd be a mistake to bet on himself. Especially just under the circumstances coming off of last year. He didn't have a great season last year. This is his first year with a new team in a new market and a full regular season. We're ramping up to a full regular season from a shortened season. I just think it'd be I just think I'd take, I'd try to work more with the Mets, maybe try to get him up to 335, maybe get him to 340, something like that. But I don't see any team willing to pay him 385. You have any thoughts on that, Jonas?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you. No, I feel like you covered that pretty well. But for some sports we don't care about news, um, well, we'll just go ahead and throw the NBA in there because I honestly don't care about the NBA right now. Uh, but there really hasn't been too much of a shift in Brooklyn Nets. Got LaMarcus Aldridge. I'm not sure if we talked about that last week, and they now are a half a game ahead, ahead of the Sixers in the East. Utah maintains their lead in the West. Nothing really too exciting going on. Oh, some breaking news: DeMarcus Cousins is joining the Clippers. Continuing with sports we don't care about, the Miami Open for tennis, the ATP 1000 event. We have the women's quarterfinals. Naomi Osaka, the winner of the Australian Open this year, pretty easily. She lost 6-0 to 6-4 to somebody named Sakari or something like that from Greece. So that will guarantee Ashley Barty remaining the world number one for women's tennis, as she is also in the semifinals of this event. And really, for the women's tennis, they don't play an extra set like the men's do for the Grand Slam. So it's kind of as equal of an accomplishment as winning the Grand Slam, just without the recognition, I guess. But and then for the men's side, you have Daniil Medvedev, who was the number one seed coming into this, as Nadal and Djokovic, Federer did not play. But Medvedev has only lost once, and that was in the last 3 months, at least, and that was in the finals in the Australian Open to Djokovic. Other than that, he's pretty much won every single match for his last few tournaments. And he's in the quarterfinal and looks primed to continue his win streak against Bautista Agut. And then going from there, I mean, the NHL, I don't really know too much about the NHL. Besides the Lightning, I guess, are first in the Central. And I guess they could have a good chance of repeating. Las Vegas looks pretty good again. And unfortunately, my Dallas Stars are not looking too good for this season to try to make a run at the Stanley Cup again. And I mean, that's, I guess women's basketball. Can't forget about that. NCAA women's basketball. As you would expect, UConn is still in there. And you might as well just give them the trophy before the season even starts. But I guess South Carolina and Stanford, the other number one seeds, playing each other in the Final Four. Who knows? Maybe that game's entertaining. Pretty much the women's bracket is pretty not entertaining. All the games are like 10, 15-point blowouts just about. Oh, except UConn almost lost to Baylor, apparently. UConn won by 2 points. So, that about does it for the sports we don't care about section of this. And, yeah, I mean, maybe one day they'll get their time to shine in the spotlight.
Yeah. But for now, I guess we'll just have to wait for next week and see if anything happens.
Well, we have the first week of baseball. Looks like I need to get my MLB subscription this year.
I've already got mine, so
I think I'm going to go monthly because I feel like after 2 months, after the All-Star break when the Rangers have a terrible record, I'm not going to want to watch it as much.
But aren't you going to want to watch Travis Shaw win you the fantasy championship?
Oh, man, you're right. If I do make it to the championship, I will want to watch that.
That way you can talk about how garbage of a player he is so that he hits a home run. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week. And we thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
See ya.
See ya.